Hello everyone! This week I did not have much time to put a video together as I am simply drowning in meetings and committee work on top of teaching my courses. But like the song from Queen goes, the show must go on, and so shall I. Hence, walking to the mall here in Queens to pick up an item I ordered, I began to think, first I began to think, what is wrong with me? I am really becoming a YouTuber that I even have to document my trip to the mall. But you know what? From the parking lot, you have a really nice view. So here is also where I thought to myself, what's next? Which one of my ideas you get to be tortured with for this week? Maybe the Grand Central Terminal? Or the Empire State Building? I mean, sure, one day, but this video, let's talk about the Triangle Shirtwaist Company. But on my way there, I saw a ghost. As you can imagine, I was shaken, but I knew I had to act. Do I call the police? No time. I need to get to the Ghostbusters. And so I ran as fast as I could to the North Moore Street, where we have probably one of the most famous firehouses here in New York City. That's right, in the Tribeca neighborhood, we have the firehouse which was featured in the movie Ghostbusters. The firehouse also makes appearances in other movies as well, but as you see, the Ghostbusters theme became part of the firehouse itself. The original Ghostbusters movie was released in 1984 and was one of the more popular movies of the 1980s, leading to sequels, spin-offs, and reboots. I mean, the newest Ghostbuster movie came out this year, 2024, right? So the legacy lives on. This firehouse station, Hook and Ladder Company 8, is still very much so active, and honestly, the building itself, it's kind of cool. Even separating it from the Ghostbuster movies, it's really historic as it was built in 1903, so over a 120-year-old building now and still standing strong. Okay, but let me take you now to Washington Place, where we have a building actually from the same time period. It was completed in 1901, so just 2 years before the fire station you just saw. Originally, it was called the Ash Building, which was later bought by Frederick Brown, who donated it to the New York University, which uses it till this day. It's a 10-story building, and the top 3 floors were used by the Triangle Waste Company, which in 1911 experienced a fire which killed 146 workers. It shook the city to its foundation and led to major reforms. The company was started in 1900 by Max Blanck and Isaac Harris, 2 recent Jewish immigrants from Russia. They moved their company to one of the floors of this building and quickly not only occupied 2 more floors, but opened more factories as business was booming, and they became known as the Shirtwaist Kings. Shirtwaists were blouses for women, as you see here. In the 1900s, as more women entered the workforce, these new blouses were simply just looser and more comfortable than the previous Victorian-style clothing, which was just more tighter and not really meant for fast movement. Hence, these were very popular. Inside of the factory, so on the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors, many young women, most of them Italian or Jewish immigrants, worked in difficult conditions with 9-hour days and 7 hours on Saturdays. Hence, 52 hours workday with very little pay. In fact, in 1909, there was a strike by the women for higher wages and less hours, but the owners pushed back as much as they could and even hired people to intimidate those who were striking and try to put an end to it. Then, just a little over a year later, on Saturday, March 25th, 1911, about 4:30 in the afternoon, so literally 15-20 minutes before the day came to an end, a fire broke out on the 8th floor, possibly from an unextinguished match or cigarette. But since everything was cramped so closely to one another and lots of flammable materials, the fire became an unstoppable force quickly. There was probably somewhere about 500 people inside of those floors. There were 2 elevators and 2 staircases. However, one of the staircases was locked. They did so in order to control access to those floors so that no one would steal, as people could be inspected coming in and out, so the workers would not take anything out. Another reason was to stop workers from having unauthorized breaks. And in few sources, I saw another reason given as the owners did not want union representatives to talk with the workers and get them to unionize. As remember, just about a year earlier, there was a strike. Hence, when the fire broke out on the 8th floor, some were able to escape, others were able to escape to the roof and onto the adjacent buildings. In fact, that is how the owners escaped. The elevator still worked for a while, so many were able to escape, but the rest, especially from the 9th floor, were simply stuck. As the fire blocked the only stairs available, elevators stopped working and the other staircase was locked. Those who tried to escape using the fire escape on the outside of the building, it simply at one point collapsed and everybody on it fell to their death. The fire department responded quickly, as you see here on this photo. However, when they got there, their ladders were only able to reach the 6th floor. And in fact, in about 30 minutes after the fire broke out, there was really no one left to save, as those who were left behind either jumped out of the windows or were burned to death. A total of 146 people. On the building today, you see a memorial and their names. At the funeral procession afterwards, thousands of people showed up. In a matter of minutes, hundreds of people's lives were destroyed. They were buried in different cemeteries, so let me show you 2 of them. First, we have Mount Zion Cemetery, which is a Jewish cemetery located in Maspeth, Queens. Here is a grave dedicated to those from the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. It is just heartbreaking to read some of the accounts. There was a couple who kissed and together jumped to their death. In another example, there were 2 girls who were found embracing, hugging one another with their bodies burned beyond recognition. Numerous engagement rings were found on burned bodies. When you go through the details, it brings tears to your eyes even today. 6 of the victims were only identified in 2011, and they were buried in the Evergreens cemetery in Brooklyn. But before I show you that, check out this really cool bench from 1895. Since the cemetery began burying people here in 1893, this is almost an original piece of the cemetery itself. Over 200,000 people are buried here. And those 2 smokestacks that you see in the background are from an inactive New York City Department of Sanitation incinerator. So back in the days, they would burn certain trash. And there's a small section with graves that go back to the 1700s. Like you see here, 1762. And some of these might even be older, although the writing is no longer legible. I do not know the history behind these graves, but it would be normal back in the days to create a cemetery in a location on which some graves already existed. Be it that the land belonged to a particular family and its members are buried there already, or part of the land was already being used as a graveyard for local community. So from here, let's go to the Evergreen Cemetery in Brooklyn, which is even older and bigger than Mount Zion, as it began in 1849, and today, over 500,000 people are buried here. It is a non-denominational cemetery, which means people of different faiths or no faiths are buried here. But it is here that we have a monument for the 6 victims which were identified only in 2011. As you can imagine how much anger this incident created at that time. Eventually, the owners were brought to court on 1st and 2nd degree manslaughter charges for locking the doors, but were acquitted, freed by the jury. Afterwards, there was a civil lawsuit against them, and they had to pay $75 to the families of each deceased person, which was about a week worth of wages. Now, that is a bit outrageous because they got paid about $60,000 by the insurance company for the damages. Later, they tried to rebuild, and by the way, they got caught one more time locking workers inside of buildings during the working hours, just as was the case with the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. However, in 1918, they closed the company for good. If I am not mistaken, this was the deadliest factory incident up to that point, because there were other incidents where more people died, but I believe they were all related to the mines, nothing like in a building. It led to the creation of a commission in New York City, which inspected other factories and introduced major reforms to the city, like sprinklers inside of the buildings, fire alarms, fireproofing materials, and the creation of the New York City Fire Prevention Bureau. All these that we many times take for granted today and not even think about. Before I end, I want to show you one more historical and personal item. You see, I made this trip to the cemetery using my bicycle. Now, the problem is that I have not used the bicycle in about 2 years, and so when I finally got to the cemetery, the front tire exploded on me, almost causing a pretty nasty fall. But I'm guessing the inner tube exploded because of age. Because you see, this bicycle here is celebrating 20 years. Yep, this is something my parents bought for me in 2004. So really their last gift together for me, as my mom passed away a year later. So I cannot even tell you how many miles this bike has, but it's a lot. It's beginning to squeak. It's a bit too small. Well, honestly, it was small 15 years ago. But you know what? 20 years with it, it's hard to imagine replacing it. And I will have to one day, but not today. So I need to drag the bike back home, patch it up, and I hope you all enjoyed this short video. And like always, I will see you soon in more New York locations. Take care, everyone.